All right. So before we start our second half of the podcast recording, we're doing a video here. um, for it's a test video, but it's also for kind of give you a little bit of a sample for those on TikTok and YouTube, of what our podcast is about. If you're not already a subscriber, so we'll give you a little bit of a taste of the podcast and how things are. And eventually we're going to be doing live, but it'll be for paying supporters. So enjoy this process. Now, mind you, there'll be this is me recording the second half or part of the second half of our podcast that we put out every week. So enjoy. All right. We are back. So, first part, recap. We talked about what kind of modeler are you? You're an armchair modeler. You weekend warrior. You full time. Um, we nothing wrong with any of them, but it doesn't matter what kind of model you are. We are modeling real trains. I mean, that's what we do. That's what it's about, right? Um, and so even though this, like we said, this podcast is model railroading, only model railroading, um, we do have to at times refer to prototype, whether it be photos, um, video, rail cams, that kind of thing. So, um, and how can that help us as modelers? Are you modeling a specific prototype? If you're doing a prototype railroad, um, you know, you're going to want to look to the prototype so you can weather that rail car or that locomotive, um, as close as you can to the real railroad. Um, if you're a freelance modeler like me, mine's a freelance based on prototype. Um, and we can go into that in another episode, but you know, I still look at rail cams, pictures, so on and so forth, to give me a inspiration. B, look at how rail cars are weathered. I mean, that helps if you're going to get into um, weathering your cars, which most intermediate modelers do. Even if you're a beginner, and you see the ones in Model Railroader magazine that have the car that rolls by and it looks, wow, it looks beat up, or looks like it's been on that railroad forever. You like that, instead of the plasticky new fresh look, which there are some cars, we do see on the prototypes, brand new car, brand new locomotive. It's nice, fresh, shiny paint, but it doesn't last that long, folks. So, anyways, going back to what can we use, and a very good resource are rail cams. So, um, I'm leading into that because actually I had here a few days ago, um, uh, the owner of Steel Highway reach out to me, and he he was asking about rail cams and stuff in this area, and I actually do have kind of a possible in for him to be able to put a rail cam up, as soon as he gets me the information, um, that he could place, and it's a very busy yard. So anyways, I after got off the phone with him, had a very nice conversation. He does have a YouTube, it's a YouTube channel, so he has his it's Steel Highway Rail Cams, folks. Um, he does do a weekly video podcast on there. I believe they're on Wednesdays, where he talks about some of these where his rail cams are and the trains going through them and stuff. It's very informative, but you know, where does that fit in with modeling? You wonder, okay, well, if you go using him as an example, he's got rail cams set up like all over the Eastern Iowa, the Midwest here. We'll just call it the Midwest. And he's adding more and more, every week, every month, whatever he gets the opportunity to be able to find a good spot. And if you're, let's put it this way: if you're in the track designing phase, rail cams are a very, very good resource. If you're thinking about having, say, a crossover, whatever they want to call that, like with like an interlocking tower and stuff, to where you have two railroads cross, um, look on rail cams. You can see how they do it. You can see how it's weathered. Um, you can, even if you're able to catch trains going through there, you can look at the car makeup, and even more so if you're a prototype modeler. um if you're, whether you're modeling BNSF or Santa Fe, or not Santa Fe, I'm sorry, Union Pacific, or uh um well, even if Santa Fe, because they're still running, BNSF is still running, heritage units and stuff, just they have BNSF on them, war bonnet paint and stuff. They're old. I mean, it'll give you weathering ideas, but it shows you what kind of cars are out there, what the weathering is of the cars in these different locations, the types of locomotives. You can see scenery, within reason. You can see the scenery around the track. Some of them you can see trackside, buildings, whether it's switch, or what do they call them, light boxes, and stuff like that. Um, so, it's a very, very good resource, um, for us as modelers, to be able to go in there and look, oh, okay, well, as an example, right now, I just clicked on the web page, and, or on his YouTube page, and one of the videos that popped up was from Galesburg, Illinois. And, it's showing, as an example, the one video, like the preview of the video, it shows a sole locomotive going down the tracks at night, just one locomotive. I mean, not only is it for designing your railroad and weathering, but you could potentially also get some operating, like for operating your railroad ideas. If you want to have, say, say you have regular operating sessions, and you just want to mix it up, go to a rail cam, and look, because you're going to find different, um, ways of operating and how they run it. How does that particular railroad run their locomotives? I mean, do they run them all forward facing, or do they run, forward back? How do they do that? And like for me, my railroad, it's the Iowa Eastern Railroad. I'm, like I said, it's a freelance railroad based off the prototype. So mine, no, while I'm not matching any track plan, um, and it's obviously Iowa Eastern Railroad is not a real railroad. I mean, there's the Iowa Northern, but I still, for operation, and I'm still in the building phase. I've got my railroad, in a sense, runs east west. Okay, so I have a spur that will go off on the current, um, section, stage one, for interchange beyond the basement, whether it's physical interchange, like if my buddy Robert, if he gets his railroad built someday, I can take the cars off, take them over to his, and if he's got industries, we can switch them in, and vice versa. Um, so that track will actually run, to me, north. That will be a northern, um, track, you know. Um, and then on my upper layout, or because mine's going to be double deck, on my upper part of my layout, I am planning on having another spur come off there, which will be a southern track. So with that, I use, because my track runs east west, and I'm kind of modeling the eastern part of Iowa, thus the name Iowa Eastern. Um, I'm been going and looking at these rail cams here from the Steel Highway, of tracks, of trains and stuff that are north of where I live and south of where I live, just so I can get some ideas of, okay, not necessarily I'm going to model, because these are just going to be, for me, tracks that, dead end, and that's where rail cars go to be moved, off the railroad or emptied and all whatnot. Um, but it helps me with the operational sense, with my story, so if somebody comes over, well, what's that track for? You can give somebody a story behind why. Well, I just want to put that in there. No, this track goes to Dubuque, Iowa, or this track goes to Fort Madison, Iowa. Or, you know what I mean? So using um, video and also pictures. I mean, um, there's just so much that we can learn from the prototype, from the modeling aspect, beyond just okay, that locomotive's got faded paint and it's got rust streaks going down right behind this fan or this or that. You know, by looking at pictures, and more so, I think are more beneficial are these rail cams. Signals is a good example. Okay, I mean, some of these cams have signal towers in them, and you can actually watch. If a train's coming and the signal changes, you can get just so much information just by sitting and watching a rail cam. Um, so what do you think? Do you use rail cams or pictures for your modeling? Obviously, if you're a prototype modeler, you will. Um, um, but if are you a freelance modeler, or are you just not? You don't really consider yourself any one of them, and you just are. You have a 4x8 sheet with oval track with some sidings. Um, have you ever thought about looking into doing something like this to up your enjoyment um, in this hobby? By simply adding some operations to your layout, because you can do it with even just the simple 4x8 sheet of plywood, for HO scale, or even if you're in, 2 foot by 4 foot, um, and having a couple spurs. You can come up with some creative ways of actually operating on something just that simple, something that basic, and taking your modeling to a whole nother level of enjoyment, because now it doesn't matter if you're running you know the 123 express. You can switch cars off and on the railroad like the prototypes do, and so on and so forth. And then if you get into a group where you're, like we talked episode or two ago, where interchange beyond the basement, whether it's physically interchanging cars or just you know um just doing them through a Facebook group like we talked. It can help build your model railroading experience, make it more exciting, and and just make the love of the hobby even more. Um, and like we said, there's so much more. Like I don't want to say I haven't thought about, or I haven't learned this, the research kind of stuff part of it. Um, but we can talk about more in another episode. But I mean, there's more to it, and as far as um, like paperwork, you know, you can go in and do some research on your railroad if you're prototype, or even if not, pick a railroad that you like. Start looking at what kind of paperwork do they use to operate, stuff like that. So that'll be something that we will dive into on another episode. So, but I'd like to know what you think. Model Railroad Talk at gmail.com. Website www.modelrailroadtalk.com. And so tell us what you think. Have you used rail cams? Have you used photos? Have you used, what's your go-to when you are unsure, you're building a model, whether it be a locomotive car, but you want to go that extra mile or whatever, you want to know what the real railroads do. What's your go-to? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you.